Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to some more game dev. Back again today doing a review of Chapter 1. I think we've done it. After a couple of months now and a fairly long period of time that I took off for vacation, we have managed to get Chapter 1 mostly complete. I think we'll be continuing to fix stuff and polishing things, honestly, for a long time. But I think it is now in a state where it is at least playable from start to finish, minus a boss fight, and I think I'm good to start showing people, specifically sending out, I think, builds in the near future. For today, though, we're going to kind of just go through a bit of the early part of the game, and we're just going to take notes and stop and fix things as we go. Yeah, that's the summary. Let's get into it. So let's take a... No, let's just jump in. We're just going to jump in. So, starting here with the initial boot screen, we have the new goddess model. I don't know if this has been shown on stream yet. I think Drixie has some ideas. We want to maybe change the hair color of the render to be closer to the portrait. I think this walk speed is too fast. I'm going to make notes. We're not going to stop and fix everything all at once. Let's kind of just do a playthrough for a little bit and then see where it naturally makes sense to stop. So we're going to bring over Pure Ref. We're going to make sure that this is set to always be on top so that we can make sure that this is always shown off to one side. We have a bunch of narrative notes and some other bugs. I'm just going to start a new section over here, which is going to be polish notes. So goddess walk speed increase. Let's increase goddess walk speed. Seems fine. I'm not going to worry about art notes today because I want to try and focus on stuff that we can do on camera without necessarily requiring a ton of time, but we'll see what we end up finding. I should probably be reading through all this dialogue more carefully too. I've done a few dialogue passes, but I still feel like some of the writing is off. It's definitely not my primary, like, it's not something I have a ton of experience with, and it's something I want to get better at, is doing kind of the dialogue stuff, but it's definitely not quite there yet. We have added more audio effects. Her animation needs to be fixed as well. Goddess's take a knee animation isn't pausing. It just plays continuously, so she kind of takes a knee and then stands back up right away. These light rays are supposed to be gone. I thought I had removed those. We're going to take a quick look at that. No, they're back. Okay, I guess I didn't save. Clear and clear. Make sure that we save this time and then restart from there. The nice thing with the autosave system is that at any point we can kind of just stop, fix something, and then go back in. Little things like that aren't too bad. I think the goddess movement speed is something that I didn't want to necessarily tackle right away, simply because it requires going and modifying a bunch of stuff in a sprite. Okay. So we can hit continue. I've also modified this. This was sliding off camera. Now we've got these kind of like save... our save slots now sliding in, which I think is slightly better than just like sliding the whole screen off to the side. We still have these rays appearing. Why are you not being removed? and they're back again. Clear, clear, save scene, switch back, and they're back. Interesting. Is there a break happening in the console when we hit save? No, but I am not seeing a save message that we've successfully... Oh, do I need to move something slightly in order for the save callback so Unity thinks we've actually modified something? Weird. I'm not sure why that was required, but modifying the dropdown should be enough for it to indicate that something's changed and that it should resave the scene. Oh, shoot. Continue. If it's still not fixed after this attempt, I'm going to just write it down and we'll move on. Okay. We've removed those light rays. Good. And that's mostly because narratively we have an interact on the windows that says like the dark mist is so thick I can't see anything out there, and so I realized it doesn't make any sense to have like light rays coming in through the window if we're supposed to have like this dark purple miasma kind of blotting out everything. Okay, pretty happy with that area. Nothing too major, although I wouldn't expect much to need to be modified in here because this has been set up for almost a year now and hasn't required too much changes. Oh, actually, this is new as of the last few months where we've added this cutscene. Demon Lords Castle TO2 floors need editing. We'll want to swap these ogre characters for some sort of guards at some point, even if it's just a matter of putting a helmet on them. We've got the sparkle on the portrait now. I think I'd like to do more with that piece of dialogue, but I just don't know what to do with it, so we're going to just leave it as is. We do have issues with the fades missing in certain areas or being rotated incorrectly. I think there's a general pass that I want to do on how we're handling the 4 fades at the edges of the map. Maybe we could look at that this evening as well. Fades need on edge of map, need a design pass is what I'll say. Oh, interesting. This is new. So we've added this stab ability, and it is not being cleared as part of this cutscene. Okay. New stab functionality is showing up during Omni Weapon cutscene. Okay, we'll need to fix that. Okay. I'm fine with most of that. Again, dialogue could use refinement over time. But if I keep polishing it to the point where I'm actually happy with the dialogue, we'll probably never show it to anyone ever. Not sure about the teleport sound effect. I like this teleport in, but the teleport out is feeling a bit odd to me. This is all working as intended. Oh, we could use or more accurately, add a sound effect for kind of sound ping in slime cutscene. And really, this could be added to the guard cutscene as well. There's a number of cutscenes that use that sound ping, and we should probably add some sort of sound effect so it's not just a silent image on the screen. Same thing here. Also, slime cutscene. We are seeing this new stab. I think the sound effect might just be a little too loud for the teleport out. I think if it was just a bit softer, it might read better. Still happy with how all of this is sounding, feeling. Really small polish point, but we could add alert icon above hero's head when he spots path east during save adventure. It's gone off screen, but hopefully I spelled everything correctly. This area is more visible now. It was a little too hidden in the grass, but hopefully it's a little more clear. I think this part of the floor could be edited to be this kind of dirt color. I think that would help make it more readable. Very small note. No, I don't want to get too much into the art notes right now. I'll try and focus more on kind of the programming things that we can fix, or design things we can fix. Level up sound effect is too loud. Okay, that all seems good. The biggest problem... This is a super small one. I'm going to fix that real quick. That grass should be walkable, I'm pretty sure. That should have autosaved. So we're going to just quickly take a break here, and we're going to go see what's going on with that tile. I'm going to guess this is just set to wall. Yeah. So change the walk behavior of that. Do we want to stop and take a look at this stab effect? Because now we've seen it show up basically in any kind of combat cutscene. It's showing up incorrectly. No, I wanna get through a little bit more of the loop first, and then we will take a look. That's probably the biggest issue. So what the stab functionality is that I had made it so that the abilities are no longer usable outside of combat. And so I added this kind of like interact to stab as like almost like a sneak attack, or a way to interact with the enemies because of the abilities all being disabled when combat is not active. I have mixed feelings on whether or not I'm going to keep it, but I was finding in previous playtests I've done, people tend to get locked into like trying to use the abilities and being really confused that they're in like an attack state essentially. And so at the very least I wanted to remove the ability to get stuck in that situation outside of combat. So for now we're just toggling the UI off. Very small thing, but crystal spawned under log if enemy dies on log bridge. This all seems good. It's in general feeling pretty solid. I'm quite happy with the way that it's all coming together. It really is just some more minor polish items and fixing bugs that I'm introducing by trying to add more polish, like making it so the abilities don't show up until you're in combat, and having to add the stab is creating issues that I now need to fix. This is a thing I've done kind of temporary, but I've just added some blockers here to prevent you from being able to go into the other half of the map, which I don't intend you to be able to really do much over there yet. And so we're going to make it so you have to save the adventurer here in order for those bushes to eventually be removed when she kind of smashes through them. Interesting. So here, sparkle interact is too high on mace pickup. And probably add sparkle interact to sword pickup, because it doesn't have it right now. We need to swap in mace pickup animation. I'm pretty sure Drixie made one of those and I've just not added those. Sparkle on mace pickup doesn't disappear when cutscene starts. I think that's because the removal of the sparkle, or the disabling of the sparkle, is being added to the bottom of whatever cutscene is being triggered. by the interaction. It needs to happen, I think, immediately. That should be an easy fix that we can work on. Very small thing. Single pixel missing in cloud transition texture. I've noticed it. It's taken me months to realize that, but we should really just fix it. Yeah, so that's the basic idea, is that when we enter into this fight, we can use our stab ability, but the issue is that it's being added during the cutscenes as we walk up, and we're triggering combat, but the interaction is still appearing. Okay, let's try and solve that one. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on there. Or, more accurately, I think I understand what's happening, and let's see if we can find a way to fix it. So, in general, the whole stab interaction was a bit of a hack. If we look at tile.cs, when we normally get the interaction, we now check to see if the tile is occupied, and if it is, we get the unit on that tile and try to tell whether or not it has a sneak ability and that we're not in combat, because I don't want the sneak ability to show up if we're in combat. And then if it has an interact, this is going to return that interact. It's also going to make sure that it's valid before sending back the sneak instead of any interaction that may have been on that tile naturally. So the question becomes, how do we prevent this interaction being true and returning this interaction mid-cutscene, I guess? Because any other situation it should be fine, but the problem is that the characters are getting their interactions updated as I am essentially moving the character via a cutscene. As I'm not positive on whether or not I want to keep this functionality, and this whole thing is kind of just a hack on top of our interaction system, let's continue hacking and try checking to see if there's some way to tell if we're currently in a cutscene. No, we can check if we can trigger a cutscene, and we can trigger a cutscene, but we can't tell if we're currently in a cutscene. Yeah, we add a response when we trigger one, and that response will be handled, but really it's just a series of sequence steps that are being performed. We don't really keep track of the fact that we're in a cutscene. I guess the closest we come to that is whether or not we use the cutscene screen. Oh, that would be super hacky. That might fix it, though. I can see potential long-term issues, but just for getting rid of the stab mid-cutscenes, as long as The current screen is cutscene screen. If it does not equal cutscene screen, yeah, fair enough. And I'm going to validate that that is what we're looking for. Yeah. So that should be enough. As this if statement gets more complicated, we're just going to add a little bit more spacing so these if statements are more readable, although they are quite awful. I'm being a little hard, but I think this should fix it. Let's start with this one. So if we come in here, yeah, this all looks fine. Do we see the stab show up? In this situation? If it's fixed here, it should be fixed in all the spots, but we'll check each one. Oh, just messing with audio has reminded me that one thing I haven't done that I think will be kind of fun, might not be easy to do on camera though, is that I do need to go through and do an audio pass and change out the music for a lot of these cutscenes. We kind of just let the forest background play for most of them. This one, we kind of have these different tracks playing, but I would like to do that for all of them. Yeah, so we're good here on this one. Let's go check H8. What state is this currently in? After mace. We can do after sword. This will be closer to what we actually experienced the first time, because this will trigger the whole cutscene. Yep, no stab. Okay, good. Last one, we'll check the first slime fight. What did I modify here? I don't think I modified anything. And then this one, oh, I modified the preset. That's fine. This is post slime fight. Let's do first slime fight. And let's make sure that the interaction doesn't show up here as well. And then we'll want to do the opposite and make sure that the interaction is still showing up outside of cutscenes. This will only work if the cutscene has kind of the black bars, but I can't think of many situations where we're initiating combat without the black bars. Yeah, okay, no interaction there, that seems good. And then last but not least, let's do post slime fight. And you know what, we'll even do after mace, because that'll be a more likely scenario where you would engage the slime after having gone through and collected the mace for the first time. Right. In order for this to be testable, we need it to be already revealed, which in a normal flow it would be. So we're going to just debug load all the tiles so that we can make sure that the interaction is still working. I think the biggest downside to this system is that later on you do get like a ranged ability, and by making it so you can't use your abilities outside of combat, it means you also can't use that ranged attack to initiate. Yeah, so the stab is still showing up correctly. Cool. So again, a bit hacky just checking the current screen, but it's bypassing or fixing the issue for the time being. I think there might be a more broad change up of some kind. Like maybe you can use your regular abilities instead of this interaction, but you have to like hit a button or something to initiate combat or to start trying to initiate combat. I'm not sure. Okay, so that's fine. What else can we fix? Add a sound effect for the ping. That should be quick. Let's see, inside of the cutscene for, what room are we in? F7, slime warning. We do the ping effect somewhere in here. Allocate the noise alert. So right at the top. So if we do audio, play sound effect, and then move this right up here to before the enemy, let's go see what sound effect we're currently using on the slimes, because I think that would probably be the easiest one to work with. Slime damage, jump, or death. None of these really feel super accurate, because we just want kind of a general idle sound. We're not currently using this land, but I think it is hooked up in here. Yeah, so that should work. So we'll go back into the cutscenes, go down to F7, and we will add that as a sound effect at the start. So save that, go into here, we'll change this back to first slime fight, and let's see if that sound effect fits the situation. It might need to be turned up in volume as well, because it might be too quiet. Oh, and we will need to turn off the debug load all. It's not super noticeable for like a sound that's supposed to draw the player's attention to there being a slime over there. Maybe it would be better just to use like damage. Yeah, I feel like damage is going to be the most impactful. It implies that it's like being hit by something, but yeah, we're not worried about that. We just want to have a sound that's definitely going to be like, oh, there's a slime over there, and I think this is our best option. So we'll try that, and then see how that feels. For the guard cutscene, and even the save adventure, I feel like those are almost going to need to be like yells of some kind. We'll see if we can find something that makes sense for that. Yeah, that works way better. Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's go Demon Castle 02. And let's see for this cutscene. Guard. This also starts with a noise alert, so we just need to add a sound effect to the top. So we'll go to the bottom, we'll add a audio play sound effect, drag that all the way to the top. And then we need to decide which one we're going to use. So taking a look at our audio options inside of here, we could use just a battle sound effect. Could also do something from the ambient side. I don't think it's farming. I don't think it's going to be an environmental one. Yeah, no, that doesn't really make sense to hearing someone heading down the hall. Like, we could do a series of footsteps potentially, but I feel like that's also not going to read very well because, well, we'd need to do a couple of different sound effects back to back to back instead of just playing one. If we go under, like, goblin or something.
Yes?
I don't think we want an actual verbal one. Humanoids. Like, we could do like something like that, like just play a couple of them back to back to indicate someone's heading down the hall. Oh, what if we do the door sound effect that we're doing in the cutscene where the ogre enemy kind of pops through the door? Clash of the Titans starts. Door open sound effect. That might sell it well enough for now. See how that feels. So we'll do door open, no delay. To imply that like maybe this like fade off into nothingness over here is a doorway. You just can't see it. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think there's maybe a better one we could find, but I think that'll work so that it's not so empty with the silent echo. And then in here, let's do before Mace. Actually, post slime fight is a better representation for the cutscene we're looking for. And then this cutscene will be G7 and save adventurer. No, that is the preventing the player from moving on once they have the ability to help them. Trapped adventurer. Okay, so we'll add a sound effect to the top of this one. I don't think the door one makes as much sense here. And we're going to run into the same problem that we have a character on the other side of the river. I don't really want to do like a help me in like voice form. Like I don't want an actual voice calling out.
Eat this.
Yeah, not looking for that. General fighter noises. Nope. Just the sound of armor? Could work. Could work. But I don't know if that's enough to like... There's like going to be the boar parrying up until this point. So like... This needs to be a moment in which the character is essentially calling, but we don't want to use a actual call effect. I mean, maybe long term there's like some sort of voice thing we can do here. I don't think there's anything environmental. Maybe it's just the same sound effect we're already doing for the parry, like an impact sound. Where do we actually, let's go look at those. If we go audio manager and then take a look at the hit sounds, where are these? Weapon sound effects. We could just do one of those. Yeah. Again, fussing with this forever is going to mean that we never actually show it to anyone or send out an actual build for people to play. So we are just going to do something so it is less quiet, but it is not going to be perfect. Let's see how that feels. I think my ideal version would be when the boar attacks and we get the parry sound. That's what initiates the cutscene. But that would mean changing it so that the parry isn't happening every 5 turns, but instead doesn't start until this cutscene has actually been triggered, which is a much larger rework. Yeah, I think that's fine. It's just so that there's some sort of sound effect there. All right, we're going to call that fine for now. Moving on. So that's done. Level up sound is too loud. That's a quick one. Let's drop it by almost half. And we'll call that good. I'm not even going to fully test that because it's more a minor tweak. Could work on the fades. Let's take a look at the sparkles. There was like a number of bugs all around those. So let's see if we can fix those. Save this. We're going to change this so that we're going to do after sword. No, before mace. Does before mace set the adventurer to lost? It does. Okay. So that should mean that when we enter into this room from the west side, we should have the mace spawned and the adventurer and the boar missing. Perfect. Okay, so this is a good setup. So the sparkle, number one, it's a little too high in this situation. I suppose the sparkle is kind of hard-coded right now. Yeah, we just hard-code these values. So we would need some sort of override for this. What does the data currently look like? Inside of the interaction data, says it's sparkle type. Okay, yeah, I'm just going to put it at the top. So we're going to just do a value here, which will be a float. Actually, I think it might just be an int. Yeah, integer for the pixel height. And this can be sparkle height override. And this can start as equal to -1. That might be a problem, but we're gonna say that's fine. Inside of here, we create a copy of the prop data, And then we can check to see if this value does not equal -1, which means we can never actually use -1 as a valid parameter. We should add a tooltip for that. Is it offset? Pixel height. That gets put into here. Okay, so we should probably actually modify... This has weird implications. If we modify this prop, then set it back to -1, there's weird data that can get stuck in here. Okay, it's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to say that this can be equal to the override height, but we'll add an else in here that resets it back to its original hard-coded value of 15, which is a magic number. And I don't like that aspect of it either. This now needs to be this prop instead. And I'm going to refactor out the magic number by just making a private const static, no, int sparkle default height is equal to 15. And that can be used here. And it can be used here. Hopefully that compiles fine. Yep. Perfect. And we'll want to do this not just in the Sparkle version, but also inside of the left wall version and the right wall version. Okay, now with that set up, we should be able to set the sparkle height to something like, honestly, 0, maybe 5. Save the scene, and we should see it move down. Yeah, so now it's over top of it. It feels almost a little too hidden at this size, though. I think just because of the color of the mace. No. There we go. Let me just move it up slightly, see if it reads a little bit better that way. Yeah, I like that more. Okay. Let's make the same change to the sword. So we're going to give this a sparkle indicator and override its height to 8 as well. And then this room is currently loading post-slime fight. Yep, we should be able to test here and see that sparkle. Then we need to figure out how to turn off the sparkle sooner, and that should be this set of issues fixed. This should be fixed. This should be fixed. Okay, yep. That seems good. Let's now see about fixing the timing of when it turns off. So if we go into, is it going to be inside the tile, I think, technically? Here. Here. We generate a new object and we set the parent to be the interactability. So if we actually go look at the setup, we should be able to see this. Will it have a proper name? It won't, so it should just be called GameObject because we didn't name it. Nope. New GameObject. That's who we're looking for. Yeah, so it's just added to the bottom of this, but we needed to add here, and then it would turn off in the right spot. So if we just do GameObject.transform, that didn't copy. Copy transform.child. We want to set the sibling index to 1. So right after the intro. And that should get the timing correct so that it turns off as soon as the cutscene starts. And we'll test it here on the sword and on the mace. What else we got? Spawn in mace pickup animation. Okay. Single pixel missing in the cloud transition. We can fix that real fast. While this is loading, cloud transition. That's going to be this one. Here. This is actually a pixel of transparency fixed. Yeah, cool. Let's make sure the sparkle is turning off. Yeah, I'm not seeing the sparkle anymore, so that turned off at the right moment. Let's go double check this one and make sure it is also working. Okay, so fix the cloud transition. I believe we have fixed the sparkle being on. Now we've got swap in mace animation. This crystal one, I don't think I'm going to be able to fix today. It's going to be a huge pain. Yeah, as soon as I hit interact, the sparkle disappeared. And isn't playing at all anymore. Perfect. Okay, so that's also fixed. Mace pickup animation. Let's see if we can track that down and get that in place. So if we go to our dungeons, props, sprites, probably going to be in forest. Could also be global. Not sure where Drixie put it. Not seeing it in forest, so let's check global. Animations. Not seeing it there either. Let's do pickup. See if we can find it this way. Still not seeing it. What is it in here? Weapon Absorb is the name. Weapon Absorb. Hammer looks promising. Where is this? Oh, it's under cutscene. Under global. Okay, sure. And then this exists. It's sliced. It looks to have its own controller, but is not hooked up. Global. Slice and anim props. Discard changes. This was not tagged. There's an ASprite file for the display. I am not seeing an ASprite file checked in by Drixie for the hammer. So that's not too much of a pain. We will need to generate a JSON file for this file. So if we open this texture in ASprite and then do file, import sprite sheet, what are these going to be? 64 by 64? Nope, that doesn't look right. That doesn't look right either. What's the size of this canvas? 160. 160 divided by 4? It was not done. Canvas import 160 divided by 4, and then 135 divided by 3. Okay. So if we just tag this, oh, it's going to need 2 sets of tags. Let's look at the JSON for the original weapon absorb. Yeah, it had an idle on frame 0 and then animation 1 from frame 1 to 12. Okay. We can recreate that. So we'll need an empty frame on the first frame. We'll give this the tag idle. And then we will tag the rest of this as new tag anim_1. Then we should be able to export this. Packed is going to be better. Unfortunate. Switch it to array because that's what my data takes. It is overflowing. Now it's a larger texture because of the extra empty one we're adding. I'd still like to find a better way to handle idles that are blank so that I don't actually have to add a blank texture. But that is a problem for the future, not for today. Because that is going to take, well, I don't know how long it would take, but I just don't want to dig into it right now. So now that that's been done, we should be able to do global slice and anim props again. We are now generating, we're going to make sure that we set idle as our default state. A little weird that we don't do that automatically as part of the slicing process. And then we'll create props just in case, although it should have already existed. And then in here, instead of using OmniWeapon Absorb, we can use cutscenes hammer. And then we'll make sure that's working. Cool. And that should fix, using the wrong animation for the pickup. Fade on the edge of the maps is probably the next most important one that's going to have the biggest impact for this release. All right, let's see this animation. Okay. It's missing a pause frame is what I'm guessing is happening. Yeah, this had a pause on frame 3. I'm going to check. Yeah, that would have been the same one. Okay. There's our sprite. All right. Oh, it might actually be... We're going to try it here and see how it feels. It's possible it's supposed to be one more forward. So we're going to add user data, add pause, and then we want to save this as an ASprite file so that we have it for the future, so that we don't have to recreate this. And then export everything the same. Go back in, slice and anim. That should add the pause frame, which the cutscene is looking for the moment to turn off the mace, basically. Don't think we care about that. We can discard. It's because I had the PNG open while I used the tool, so it's complaining about it being modified twice or in 2 different ways. I also feel like this animation is flipped compared to... Yeah, it's flipped. Zoom in so I can get a better look at this. Yeah, it's coming from the wrong side. Also an easy fix. Canvas, flip horizontally. Export again. And then I don't think I need to slice and anim because we've just kind of flipped the sprite spots, but whatever. We'll just do it. And then don't care about that, discard. Cool. So then with this animation hooked up, we... Yeah, I think fading on the edge of the map is probably the next big thing to look into. Okay, that's looking better. I'm going to say that's done. One quick one we can do on this list actually is the goddess's walk speed being slow. We should be able to fix that. We're in the same kind of folder area. Should be here. Goddess. Close the animations. Open the ASprite. And then under the walk, what is the current frame rate of these? Right, 100. I'm going to say, if we take a look at hero, this one, formatted. Hero's walk speed. $35. Yeah, 100 would be like the base. It just hasn't been updated. And then we can just export sprite sheet. That data all looks correct. And then for characters, this should be NPCs/goddess. And then slice and anim. and we'll do a quick check to see if that sped up her movement. So we'll go back to boot and start a new game just to see that cutscene real fast. And then we'll dig into the floor fading, which will probably end up taking the rest of the stream, but we'll see. Maybe there's a tech way we can fix it. I've been putting this one off for a while, partly because Drixie's been building up the floors and kind of getting in base ones. And I feel like we're finally at a point where we can not interfere, because Drixie's done. She's done a first pass on every floor texture. So it should be quick for us to go in and add these. Yeah, that works. Maybe a bit too quick, but I'd rather quicker than too slow. So we'll say that's also fixed. Fades on the edges of the map. So let's take a look at what's currently set up. Right now, what we're doing is we have essentially a decal called floor exit, and we have like the facing of it. We could go through and add this decal to every single room, but because this floor decal has transparency, when the character is fading up or fading down, they kind of clip into each other and the sorting order gets broken. And I probably could fix it on like a shader standpoint, but I just don't have the knowledge to be able to figure that out easily. So I'd rather just fix it by bypassing it entirely and just not making this a transparent texture. But I want it to be a transparent fade so that you see the edge of the world a little bit. So if we bring back pure ref, we can see what I'm talking about here. Like it shows a bit of the fade of the floor. So I do want it to be transparent, but I just don't want it to be an actual like prop that can get layered with hero. So there's two ways to fix this. The most brute force like way is going to be actually going into each of the maps, loading this up, and then essentially adding that fade directly to the floor here. But if Drixie wants to modify this or do anything with this area now, we're going to run into layering issues. We'd have to start saving every one of these PNGs as like an A-Sprite file, which has implications. Right now it's easier for them to be PNGs because some of these get generated as part of like creating new rooms. So having it built into the file, if we're 100% sure that this is the final version of the floor, is fine. It would be a big pain to go through all 30 odd rooms, and as we add more rooms, we'd have to keep making sure we keep adding the texture directly to this, but it could be done. It's the most manual way, but it also requires the least amount of programming work. The other option is looking at adding another layer to the floors. So right now, the floor is actually made up of one texture or one shader, one material that has two different textures associated with it. So if we load into this room, and then ignore the cutscene and just go look at the floor, you can see it almost has this weird kind of double coloring. That's because the water texture is of a different size until it actually gets turned on and starts getting updated by a script. But because this isn't actually a water tile, it doesn't end up using it. But we have the base, and then we have layer 1, and we even have like a layer normal, which we're not using. But these two textures end up getting used for this one floor. And this is even more noticeable when we go into something like F7 and load all. Because Drixie used this kind of technique in order to actually draw directly onto the water tiles, because the floor texture renders higher than the water, And so by drawing directly onto the floor, you basically get to overwrite the top of it. So the water texture is just a repeating, endless kind of loop of water kind of animation. But then in the spots where the floor has these kind of lily pads that are easier to see here, I guess, these are just drawn directly on top. So rather than drawing the texture into the actual floor map PNG, and instead of making it like a decal prop that's overlaid and transparent on the edge of the map, we could instead make it so that it is another texture entry inside of the floor objects. You know, I think this is the right way to do it. Or, sorry, not right way, but I think this is the way I want to do it, because another thing that we want to look at is the sides of these floors. We have this like floor trim that we use around the outside, and I've kind of gotten used to it because we've had this set up for a year, 2 years or something now. It's just like, oh yeah, that's just the edge of the tile. But Drixie really feels like each of these should be unique. So like if this is the edge of the river, this should feel more like the edge of a river on the outside of this tile. And it just means that we need to make these sides of the geometry of the tile meshes editable. So if we're coming in and modifying the floor to get this extra like fade, I'm going to kind of already be in here. So it feels related to this other task. What is this object? This is floor holder, floor destination. It's been renamed. How do I tell what prefab this is using? Is that under the board? Base floor tile. Yes. Okay, so this is our base floor tile. So if we look here and we can see this is using a custom lit layer for the shader. If we go edit, is this going to open up a shader graph for us? It is. How complicated is this shader graph? Not too complicated. So this is our this is unhooked. Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I've touched any of this work, but this seems pretty straightforward. We basically just have a texture which has some UV parameters. This has some layer 1 parameters, and then this is a layer 1 texture. Layer 1 being the water. Wait. No, I was going to say, could we just, because this is not water, could we just repurpose it? But it's not going to quite work that easily because the base is actually the water, which is the lowest level, and we want to draw these shadows on top of layer 1. So we do need a layer 2. So if we come in here and we just copy layer 2, abandon the bottom part, and we just paste this. And instead of layer 2, we do, or layer 1, we do layer 2. Name this layer 2. Layer 2, layer 2. These get these new names. And then we copy this blend. I'm not Not sure about the ordering. Yeah, I have no idea what this is going to do. But this is essentially copying this to here. Like, I could think it out, but this is an overwrite. So this should layer over top of this one, because this layer 2 was in the second entry with its alpha value and was layering over top of the water texture. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong? So now this has a layer 2 texture which has nothing in it currently. How does layer 1 get set? Oh no, we renamed this to layer 2. We need to actually make new entries. Can I not just copy these? Copy, paste. There we go. This becomes layer 1. This becomes layer 1. This moves down to here. And then this is layer 1. No, this needs to get replaced, I guess. So this becomes layer, this one, which is now layer 1. I have a bad feeling that because of the way I've done this, I've replaced the wrong one essentially, but maybe it still works because the naming is the same. Yeah, so now there's layer 1 and layer 2. That seems fine. This looks okay. Before we do anything else, let's see if just this modification has completely broken our floors. So let's go to like F7, which has like already some layering with the water and the lily pads, and take a look at what impact just this modification to the shader has had. And then we'll figure out how we actually layer the fade texture over top. Yeah, okay, sure. Why? Because layer 2 is empty and it is being overwritten or is overwriting the floor. Okay. So we need some sort of check to see whether or not the texture is actually set to something to decide whether or not we use it. Is there some way of... Default is none. Is there some way to see if this is set? Different option. What if we default it to a transparent texture? Then we don't have to figure out the shader node stuff. We just add transparency to every object. Plus might be faster from a shading standpoint. I don't know. Now it's not having to do any if logic, which I know shaders really don't want to do. Vaguely. I vaguely know shaders don't like that. Yeah, so that fixed it. So then the question becomes, how do we actually add the transparency? Actually, let's do this while it's running. So what is this decal? We said it was... fade exit or something along those lines. Fade exit. Wall fade work in progress. Wall fade final. Two different versions of it. One for the Demon Lord's Castle, one for global. Okay, we'll use the global version. So if we come in here and select this box, and we give this a actual fade texture, what does that do? Whole lot of nothing. If we delete this, well then it becomes white. So if we undo back to transparency, I can see that it gets slightly darker when I add it, but it is not doing what I would think it would. What about this water texture? What does this look like? This is a 128. 128, 128. What is the size of... These are 640 by 640 textures, but we're only using a small portion of it. What size is the water when we're actually animating it, though? Oh, we're animating through it at 0.4s? Okay, so or at 25%. So this is actually a texture with a 16 frame animation in it. So if we do 128 divided by 4, it's a 32 by 32 texture. So then if we take a look at that fade, yeah, this should be the right size. Oh, does it need a value of 1 and 1? Okay, that completely breaks. But does it break in a good way? Okay, okay. I'm just getting the values incorrect. So x1, y1, z0, w0 does get the fade to appear how I would want it to. What if we do like -1? -1. Does not flip it. Okay. So there will be a question of how do we rotate the fade. So this is moving it by changing the Z. I think we're sliding it. I think we're scaling it is what we're doing when we're doing that. Which breaks it completely. Yeah, so we'll need to find a way to flip the texture. so that it's different depending on what side it's... Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to brute force this. Interestingly, it looks like I could use this same texture and then just set the UV coordinates in order to make it not appear as well. So every floor tile could just have this layer, but just decide whether or not to set its UVs to determine whether or not it's visible. Frame rate's down a little bit, but that could be related to a bunch of other stuff I've done recently. Honestly, it could be related to being on stream as well. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's cool. We can much more easily see what's happening in here by modifying it. So yeah, changing this 1 is stretching it, essentially, which we're never going to want to do. Yeah, because it shrinks down to the edge. But we kind of want to flip it to -1. But negative just seems to expand it out. Yeah, really far, basically. So yeah, changing this to anything other than 1 isn't going to give us what we want. And then changing the Z value is also kind of essentially stretching it. Same thing here. Oh, is it because I don't... this is set to clamp? If we set this to repeat... and then change this value, that continues to stretch. That's definitely never going to be what we want. But that might be now. If we go to game view, so that's changing where the edge of the fade starts. But if we do like 1, 1 here, that doesn't do anything. Half. Half? No, just ends up sliding it. Yeah, every so many steps it basically realigns back to being visible. But this texture has a hidden version that it's basically double layered. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to see if I shift it left and right enough, if I can get the other version to render, because it'll eventually sample the other pixels, which I guess is here. I don't think I ever want to stretch. No, that's it. There it is. It's close. But we can see it for a second there. It does eventually render the other texture. That's flipped from what we were seeing before. But it's not quite aligned because of the way I'm stretching and tearing it. So there is a way, I don't know what the parameters are going to be, and I'm probably going to have to brute force it, but there is a way to get two different variations out of this texture. I just need to figure out what the UV coordinates are going to need to be in order for me to see... Oh, that was close. That can be 0. That needs to be 3 for some reason. But 0.9 seems to be the magic number here to get us to see the other version of pixels. Yeah, okay. I can brute force this all day. That's fine, but I think on air I'd like to try and move on. Yeah, let's see if we can find a way to do this without having to magically play with the numbers. How would I flip this without just changing the UVs? I can't just change the size or the scale of the model because that's going to break everything. So we have to modify only the texture. Normally when we're doing decal work, how does that work? So like when I go into, say, this room, and I look at this scene value, we can see this is kind of a garbled mess of nonsense. But when we look in here, it's kind of showing correctly. If we choose this, let's go game view and scene view together. When I change this to south facing, is that flipping the texture essentially? Is that what it's doing? Just like modifying the object? Well, it's not doing that, but it's something close to it. If we do north, and then look at the sprite renderer. So it's not using the flip values, but it definitely is flipping something. Decal facing. Decal facing. Where is that value? Prop loader. Direction. Yeah, it's this direction value. How is that direction being used? Yeah, north, south, east, west. Get direction, which is using the direction index to turn it into an enum. This is getting the loaded direction. Tile offset set rotation. Rotation transform. $90, 0, 0. So then if I change this to south facing, 90, 180. Okay. So the way that I'm flipping the decals in here is by changing the rotation of the object. But we can't do that for a UV'd object, I don't think. Yeah, 90, 0, 90. Okay. So then the question becomes, how do we create a similar set of functionality where we can, like you can see I've rotated this left, right. How can we do that with a texture? because we can't do it purely with UVs, I don't think. Yeah, okay, so let's actually see what's happening here. So inside of that texture, inside of the UV parameter that we are modifying, the first two parameters, the X and the Y, get split out into the tiling, which is essentially changing how you want to tile it across. So for us, it'll always be 1, 1, I think. I don't think we ever want to change the tiling unless we want to go negative. But again, I think that's fine. And then the bottom one is the offset, which is shifting where we're rendering along the axes. But again, that's not really going to rotate it either way. So we need to figure out the math. It is going to be something in here, I think. There's got to be a way to do this. There's got to be a way to, based off some parameters, flip which pixel we're grabbing when. Okay. There is a way to do this that involves doing a bit of shader math, but I'd have to do research and figure that out, and I don't feel like doing that on camera. So moving on for today, we're just going to make it so it is built directly into, we're just going to use different textures. We're going to create 4 different textures, and we're going to flip and rotate those in Sprite, and we will assign different textures based off of which edge floor this is. So if we go into here, let's go back into base floor. Where is this located? This is inside of this prefab here. We have a template. We have some prop stuff. I'm going to grab this fade, and rather than edit it inside of global, I'm going to move it down into a separate folder. Is there a kind of generic folder inside of the dungeons? There's details. There's shared. Oh, I think shared is completely obsolete now, actually. Okay, I'm going to put this in template. And then this is a couple of different scripts that manage rendering. This tile one, is this modifying base textures offsets? Okay. Oh, what if we do that? What if we treat it like a water tile? So instead of swapping out the texture, which I think is somewhat costly to switch the texture on each of these objects, what if the material was just all 4 of them, but at different offset positions? So that we can repurpose this exact same logic from the sprite sheet animation So if we copy this, we call this like, I don't even know, floor sprite offset manager. And then this would modify not base map, but instead set texture offset for as soon as it finishes loading, we can try and figure out which parameter we need. Okay, so inside of this one, yeah, interesting. It's this texture. So if we go layer 2, copy, and then, okay, well, it's lost my reference in some of the loading it was doing, but we should be able to find it in here. Instead of setting the texture offset for base, we set the offset for layer 2. And instead of the offset being in a decision here based off animation, we can do update offset. We'll figure out what parameters we need in a second, but it would be basically just 0.5. 0.5. Thinking about this backwards. Okay, so then if I do this, we'll also need to adjust tiling, I think, as well. What was this? This was just updating the offset, which again, we don't care as much about here. What if we just make these public variables for testing? X offset and Y offset. I'm not sure why these are reversed. I'm going to just fix that. I assume it was something I did when I was just kind of figuring it all out. And then we're going to update every frame. We'll also adjust. The tiling is divided by the frame count. I think this will default to 2 by 2. We don't need a frames per second or any of this other timer logic for this one. We're simply just deciding what section of the texture to render. I guess technically I don't need to do this every frame because it won't change the texture sizing. And this will also be something we can edit as part of the initialization rather than it being a constant update. But for testing, we're just going to do it in update so that I can modify the values and see what happens. So then if we come into this base tile, and we just do that, we need to build the texture as well. So if we go to that template file, I passed it. Close all this UI out here. So if I open this in Sprite, double the canvas size to 64 by 64 by the top left corner. And then I want to grab this and I want to do, each permutation will be a different flip essentially. So can I do that without, like, can I just do the rotation, flip horizontally? I don't think that did what I wanted. Okay. New plan, new file. This one exists here. Let's flip this horizontally. I don't think that did anything. All right, let's try flipping vertically. That definitely did something. Okay, so then we'll try putting the vertical one here. It might also be that this needs to be rotated. Actually, let's try that. What if we did, let's start with, before flipping, we'll do 4 rotations. So we'll do 1 rotation here. Copy that, paste it down here. We'll rotate it 1 more time. And then we'll paste it here and rotate it . This one feels off. Like all the other ones lined up in the center to almost create a ring. I may have done that wrong in some way that I can't picture, but let's save that. And then we will make this the texture we use for layer 2. We'll set it to 1, 1. This means that every tile will have this fade, but again, we can figure out a way to, like, I mean, set the XY to 0, 0 and it'll disappear. We'll have to do some sort of data management to be able to say, like, which tiles need to have this done, which I think we can figure out from, we already kind of have the data in the form of the transition tiles that, like, the character walks in on. Interesting. So if we choose this tile, go to the top here, and we change this to like 1, 1, doesn't do anything. 2, 2, 0, 2, 2, 0. None of these are doing anything. It's interacting with the water in some way. Yeah, that's wild. But not doing what I would expect here. to anchor this up here, and then if we go to like an inspector in here and modify this value, are these values changing? They are. Okay. So all of this is just changing the Z and the Z and the W. When we look at a texture like one of these, this is animating through the water. Yeah, that doesn't work. These values are half. Oh, did I mess up something with the adjustment? Maybe that's the problem? So if I click on one of these and change this to be half and half, now it's rendering correctly. And if I go through the rotations, oh, this is being set by this. So if I go here, 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 and here, I think that is all configurations. One, so that's facing to the left. The first one was facing out of the map. That's the same as the first one. That's facing in, and that's facing out. Okay, yeah, so we can get all configurations. There's just some math we broke with the initial setting of this to be half. So if we do 0, 0, though, it becomes basically close to a solid black opposed to just disappearing. Interesting. I wonder if we'll need to make this a... if we'll have to add the blank in. Well, I guess 1, 1 does it. So if we set it to 1, 1, it disappears. Which might just be a happy accident, that it just doesn't sample any of those pixels when it's at full scale. Another question is, if we move the destination for this tile, we get some shadowing from the lighting, but it doesn't look like the texture changes. If we go back into here and change this to like I gotta change this to half. Yeah, and then if I move the destination up and down, yeah, the pixel snapping is still working correctly as well, which is going to be important for as the tiles slide up and down. Okay, cool. So there's a small bug with how we're determining the sizing. So if this is frame count is X, 1 divided by 2, yeah, this should have been set to half. Interesting. Two. Oh, did I not change? Yeah, this is still modifying base map. Needs to change layer 2. Okay, that's all that is. Cool. Easy oversight. Unity's loading in the background. Come on. There we go. Okay, so then We load into here. We'll need to write some sort of converter that converts from north, south, east, west directions to the correct offsets within our texture. So yeah, now they're all facing this way. If I come in here and change this one to 1, that one to 1, that to 0, I can get every configuration. Yep. Okay. And then if I set the offset of the parameter to 1, 1, through some happy magic, it looks like scaling the texture to 1, 1 makes it so that we don't sample any of the texture pieces. That's kind of wild, but I think that is what's happening there, which means we get a blank texture. Okay, so we have the ability to set this up. We just need to write some code where, based off of some information that's going to need to come into the tile, it's going to need to get its it's going to need to get this script, decide whether or not it should have an offset of 1 or half, and if it's half, determine what facing that tile should have, and then determine the X, Y offset based off of that directional facing. There's a fair amount more work here, but not too bad. So this transition tile currently has some information about where we're going and the exit ability. The spawn tile has the spawn facing. Is this used as part of our import-export? It is. Okay, I think there might be a way to interpret the data automatically, but I think it might also just be easy to just add an extra parameter to the transition tiles that tell us which facing we want the fade to be. And we'll have to add an extra piece of information to core tile data. Unless we want to embed it inside of the transition data, but I think this is passed directly to register scene transition. So I don't want to embed extra information into that if I don't have to. Yeah, spawn direction would be able to tell us the facing. The issue is it's on the wrong tile. We need to have this information on tile 17.2 or whatever that ends up being, but the entry's on the wrong spot because this is where you're actually spawning in. This is where you're exiting. Okay, there's some data management. I think we'll add some more variables. It'll be fine. We're at time for me taking my dinner break. We're going to stop for 2 hours. We will be back around 6 p.m. PST, or about 2 hours from now. A little bit less now, more than an hour and 50 minutes. We're going to continue kind of just playing through the build, reviewing it. I don't know if we'll get through all of Chapter 1. In some regards, I don't want to show all of Chapter 1 on camera because We will have some codes that I can share for people to play through and give their feedback without watching me play it, but actually playing it themselves relatively soon here. But we'll finish up the fades, and then we had kind of resolved most of the polished notes we saw from early in the stream. I think we'll probably pick up where we left off and play a little bit further, maybe make some more notes, or just find some other things to fix. Like there are some programming features for building the ability to play abilities in cutscenes, so I can have the characters perform an ability rather than like sometimes I'm just triggering their animations, but I'd like to actually have it so that the ability is being done in the cutscene. There's a lot of polished stuff to do. But the build is playable from end to end. So I could share it out at any moment here. And I think no matter what, by next week, I'm hoping, well, knock on wood, we'll see, to have some codes that we can share in the Discord. But some stuff might come up. But I think the build is playable. It's now I'm just polishing for the fun of it more than anything. Anyways, gonna take that dinner break. I'll be back in a little under 2 hours. For now, though, this will be Tolhi signing out. Later.